Hey guys, it's Brett. Thanks for dropping by my channel, and if you're returning, thank you for coming back. So today I wanted to talk about May wrap up. I read 18 books this month, 17 of which I'm going to discuss today. I'll try to go fast. Stick around. All right, so 18 books. It was a huge month. I've never read this month before. I don't know why or what changed or what, but I don't know. So I'm happy about that because I get to share all these with you, and I read so many good things. The only book I'm not going to discuss this month is Wide Awake Now. Not because the book is not good, but I read this specifically for one of our guests for Pride Month for the Gays Reading podcast, and it is a young adult book, and I just felt that most people who are watching this are not usually interested in young adult novels, and that's the only reason. But if you are, and I'm mistaken, please let me know below, or I'm happy to talk to you about it. So let me know. All right, the other thing really quick is what I've been reading currently, which is I just started at last night, Same as It Ever Was by Claire Lombardo. Claire also will be coming on to the Gays Reading podcast at the end of the month. I'm not far enough to tell you anything other than to say intrigued, but not even 10% in yet. It's a huge, almost 500-page book that will be coming out later this month. Okay, so 17, here we go. Number one, Earth by John Boyne. As I've said before, this is part of his Elements quartet. The third one, Fire, comes out this fall. This is about a very talented footballer who is standing trial with another one of his teammates for a sexual assault of a young woman. So most of the book is what leads up to this supposed event. It's really well done. It's really well crafted in very few pages. I didn't enjoy it quite as much as the first book, but I did really like it. You know, one of the things that he does in these books is he drops a character in each of them who will be the one who kind of is the centerpiece of the next book. So it was kind of fun going into this knowing that, thinking, you know, who's it going to be that's going to kind of be becoming the next leading character. It is dark. There is certainly sexual assault, and it's disturbing, and I'm not going to lie. So I would just let people know that, but a really, really good book. All right, next, River East, River West by Abbé Lescure. This is one of two books that I read this month that had kind of these dual narratives that were happening. This one is a young girl who is half Chinese, half American, being raised in China by her expat American mother. Her mother then gets involved with a older Chinese man who is the other narrative, and it kind of follows his story. Eventually, of course, they converge. It's so good. This came to my attention because Abbé Lescure is on the one of the authors on the shortlist for the Women's Prize. It's so deserving. And again, I so appreciate some of these prize lists for bringing to my attention people that I would never have ever probably picked up their book. It was really, really, really terrific. So check it out. And thank you to William Morrow for this copy. The God of the Woods, Liz Moore. This is, I will probably be featuring this again when I talk about July books. Originally, this was supposed to come out this month. They pushed it back to July 3rd, which makes me think it's probably going to be a book club book in the States, but we'll see. Liz Moore's follow-up to Long Bright River, which was excellent. This is also a terrific book about a young girl who goes missing at a summer camp that is owned by her family. The big caveat with this, or the twist, or the added-on bonus, or whatever you want to call it, is that her brother disappeared years earlier. So I will say this. It is not a thriller. It is a very well-plotted, character-driven, it's actually a very mixed character and plot-driven mystery novel. I don't want to lead people astray and think you're going to get into this and be like, I have to get to the very end, I have to know. There are certainly elements of that, but it is not what I would call, in any shape or form, a typical thriller. This is very much, to me, a literary mystery, and a very, very, very good one. So I was immediately drawn in. I was very invested. Really interesting characters. So, and I would never have figured out where it was going. So bonus. So January. So July 3rd, this is hitting bookshelves, so add it to your TBRs. And thank you to Riverhead for that book. Okay, so Edinburgh by Alexander Chee. I've never read any Alexander Chee. This is a backlist title for me. It came to my attention. Well, first of all, I'd heard so many people talking about how amazing Alexander Chee was and this book and how to write an autobiographical novel. I just never had read him, never got around to it. But this friend of mine on Bookstagram, Katie Lee, writes, she does a monthly read Asian classics reading group, and this was last month's, and so I jumped on it, and I am so grateful for that because first of all, it gave me the impetus to do it with a group of people, and now I am completely a member of the Chee Hive. I flipped out over this book. It is exceptionally beautiful writing. It's so moving. Again, disturbing that the kind of beginning of the book is about a group of boys who get molested by their music teacher and the ripple effects of that. But it follows one boy in particular named Fee through the next several years of his life, what happens to some of his other choir mates, but who he becomes and what kind of legacy that is. The narrative switches around halfway through in an amazing way, but I thought it was so well crafted, so beautiful. I can't wait to read my next book of his, and now a huge fan, obviously, because then I went out and bought a hardcover copy of the book, which happens to also be signed because I just wanted to have this in my collection. So, loved it. Okay, so remember when I just earlier said there was two books that had kind of dueling narratives? This is the second. There's going to be Trumbull by Jen Silverman. Thank you to Random House for this copy. This is my first Silverman book that I've ever read. And in fact, I will say, of everything that I read this month, there were only two authors, Liz Moore and John Boyne, who were repeats for me. Everyone else was brand new, which was incredible. And it really just made me so excited to discover so many new authors, some literally new authors with first books, but many like Jen Silverman, who has been around, who I now get to go back and read all their other stuff. So really exciting. Okay, so this book is two stories. One is about a school teacher in the United States who gets caught up in a scandal, who has to resign. She ends up taking a job at a Paris university, and while there meets another teacher, a very young Parisian, who she starts to have an affair with, who is involved in the Gilets jaunes, the yellow vest protests, and what happens. At the same time, in the late 60s, there is a young scientist who's working at Harvard University alongside a very controversial figure who gets involved with a woman who is in a group protesting the war, the Vietnam War. So these kind of two stories of two very different people involved in conflicts, and it's really interesting. And of course, they'll eventually converge in a way that is interesting. So I thought this was really fascinating. It really invites the question of you as the reader as to what would you do in a given circumstance like this, and how would you act? And for two people who wouldn't necessarily view themselves as politically motivated kind of people, and how would you act in those situations? So check it out. All right, In Tongues by Thomas Grattan. This just came out. I thought this was so fantastic. Again, Thomas Grattan, his other book a few years ago called The Recent East. I've had it forever, never opened it, but I absolutely will be now. And thank you to MCD Books for this. This is about a young man who moves to New York City and starts working for an older gay couple who are involved in the art world. He's kind of out of his element. You know, it is a coming of age story, but he is living with a friend of his, and it's what happens. But it's really kind of talks a lot about class It talks a lot about, in terms of gay culture, this currency of youth and beauty. I thought it was just exceptionally well written. I found this protagonist messy but engaging. It's sexy. I don't know. I can't say enough good things about it. I really, really, really love this book. Speaking of loving books, Sandwich by Katherine Newman. This will be coming out later this month. Later this month. First of all, can we just talk about this cover, which just screams summer book, and the book itself it delivers on that promise. This is a really wonderful, heartfelt, sweet story about a woman named Rocky, who every year she and her husband and two children go up to the Cape to vacation. She has two children who are, one is in college, one is graduated. And there's some things in her past that kind of come out in this week, something that's happened to her. Katherine Newman just came on the Gaze Reading podcast. This episode will be coming up at the end of June. I would urge you to listen to that episode, but also read this book. It's not very long. You can see I tabbed all over the place because I found so much to identify with in this book as a parent. But she is just the epitome of delightful and warm and heartfelt, much like her book. I think it's just, if you're a fan of Ann Patchett and her books, I think you would really like this as well. It's really lovely and terrific. Oh, and thank you to Harper for this, Parker Books. The Bump by Sydney Karger. I would say add this for your list of Pride Month, Pride books to read. Sydney Karger previously wrote this book called Best Men, which was really fun. I liked this better. This is the story of two men who are having a baby via surrogacy. Their surrogate is in California. They live on the East Coast, so they decide to take a road trip across the country before the baby's born. And it kind of puts their relationship to the limit, bringing up a lot of questions of should they even be doing this? Should they even be having a child? All of those fears and insecurities. And I'm just sitting here realizing there's an interesting thing because, when you're as a heterosexual couple, when you have a baby and you are in it together, right? And so you're watching this kind of happen, especially if it's a family where the wife or the female partner is pregnant, you're watching it, right? But as a gay couple, or if people sometimes if they're adopting or doing a surrogacy, they don't get that. So all of these things are very valid. These kind of, oh my God, what are we doing? Because it's so much of the unknown and what's coming. I found this really delightful. It's very sweet. It's I think it would probably be classified as a rom-com in a way, weirdly. And I can see that, but I also think this would be a great movie of the week. It's just a very sweet, delightful story about not just these two men potentially having a baby, but also their families. And it's a lot about family in general. So, Fire Exit by Morgan Talty. This comes out June 4th. It is really, really, really well done. It is about a man living on an Indian reservation, or I should say across from an Indian reservation. He lives in a house that's across from his neighbors, but the reason he's living there is the daughter of the neighbors. He has this secret, which is it's his daughter. And he decides he wants to tell her that he is her father. And so that's kind of the launch off point for the book. This is a really tightly told, simple character piece that is loaded with so much emotion. It's not very long, so it's something you can get right into. It's really beautiful writing. It's This is the equivalent to me of like an indie film that is packs a lot of emotional punch, has a lot to say, but does it with brevity and beauty. It's a really, really, really well done narrative. Speaking of well done narratives, Anyone's Ghost by August Thompson. I think this is such a provocative and cool cover, and it just screams to me like 70s metal. um, this is a startlingly amazing debut. Um, I just want to read you the very first line of this. It took 3 car crashes to kill Jake. This is about a friendship between 2 young men, our protagonist and this guy Jake, who he, in the way that so many people do in their youth, it somewhere straddles between a line between hero worshiping and pure love. And their relationship that develops over a number of years. I loved this so much. It is sweet but sweet in the most heartfelt, open up your chest and gut me kind of way. It's beautifully written. It is so raw and honest and real. And I think it's on somewhere that said, oh yeah, in the words of Jonathan Safran Foer, this book will make you cry. And this book absolutely made me cry. It just frankly reminded me a lot about youth and coming to terms with so many things and having this kind of love for another person that you in some ways don't even fully understand what it is yet. Check it out, and thank you to Penguin for this. Fervor by Toby Lloyd. Let's talk about this beautiful cover for a second. I mean, absolutely stunning. Thank you to Avid Reader Press for this beautiful finished copy. I became intrigued by this because it got starred reviews in both Kirkus Reviews and in Publishers Weekly. It is about an Orthodox family living in North London. The mother of the family is a Zionist who eventually, the mother of the family becomes a best-selling author. However, the youngest daughter goes missing early on in the book, and no one knows at first what happens to her. She ends up being found and seemingly fine and never discusses where or what happened to her. But the family starts to believe that she's a witch. And that's kind of all you need to know. It's interesting because part of this book, a big part of it is a campus novel because part of the narrative is told from the point of view of a woman who goes to school with the middle son in the story. And it's a lot about him. But slowly the story gets, Toby Lloyd very deftly changes the narrative focus at points, and it all becomes very linear. It's just that he's a master of kind of keeping it linear while changing focus. That's the best way I could describe it. It pulls heavily on Jewish mysticism and kind of Jewish history, the stories that get passed down, the Palestinian conflict. There's so much going on in this book. I can't even say enough about it to just say I had been completely captivated by this. It's also, I listened to this on audio as well, and it is an expertly read audiobook. And if you're an audiobook person, add this to your list. The narrator, she's incredible. So anyway, I haven't seen this really anywhere on any of these book platforms, but I would say check this one out. It's really, really good. Okay, 2 books that are very similar to me because of their settings that also are related to, I'll start like this way. Both of them, if you were fans of Audrey McGee's The Colony, like I was, then check out both of these books because they can work as a trio together. The first is Clear by Davies. This is about a young priest who is tasked with going to an island, a Scottish island, to evict one of its like remaining members. I think he is the remaining member whose family has passed away, and this guy has lived there forever. When the priest gets to the island, though, his boat is in an accident. He almost dies and is washed ashore. He's unconscious. This man on the island finds him and nurses him back to health. And what happens? It's so beautiful. It's completely unexpected. It goes to a place I didn't expect. I don't want to say much more. It's very short again, so this is not a big commitment, but really, really good. Also similar, sticking with our island theme, is Elizabeth O'Connor's Whalefall. Again, small island. This is off the coast of Ireland. In this book, it follows one girl named Manod, and who lives with her sister and her father. Her mother has passed away. Two people arrive on the island who are ethnographers, which I didn't know what that meant, so I looked it up and I'll tell you what it meant, which are people who study a specific culture or a group. So they are coming to write about this group of very small people left on this island. This girl begins to work for them as an assistant and gets very involved with them and very caught up with them. Some of it becomes like a sexual awakening. So it's what happens. It's great. It's it's extremely engaging. Again, I listened to this on audio. I would highly recommend. And not another long book, very short, so it's easy to get through quickly. This is again why I had 18 books this month, because it was books like this. But a really, really, really solid debut. Elizabeth O'Connor is one of the writers that Granta picked this year as 10 debut writers, and I've been talking about some of the other ones as I've read them this year. So she's part of that list, and it's no surprise why, because it's a really, 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 really strong debut. So check it out. Okay, Exhibit by Aro Quan. This is my first Aro Quan book. Really, I say this so much, really interesting. But this was about a woman who is married up living in the Bay Area, who meets this other Korean, she's Korean, she meets another Korean woman who is a ballet dancer, and she becomes very enamored with her. And our lead protagonist is a photographer, and she wants to photograph this woman. And a very hypersexual S&M kind of relationship develops. It is really sexy, really hot. It really stretches and shows you, I think, what lit fiction is really capable of. At times, not quite experimental, although it certainly felt like that to me. So there were a few times I was like, I'm not sure what this means or what the meaning of this passage is, but overall, a really good narrative, really interesting. Again, Aro Quan was just on the Gaze Reading podcast, and check her out. She is really fascinating, really funny, and truly has the best eyewear of anyone I've ever seen. How It Works Out by Myriam Lacroix. This absolutely gets the award for strangest, most out there fiction I've read this year. And thank you to Overlook and Abrams Press for this copy. This is about a relationship between two women, but it's various versions of their relationship. Everything from the first story involves them living together and finding a baby in an alley and what happens, to one of the characters effectively cannibalizing her partner. It is bawdy and funny and weird and gross at times, but it's like I couldn't look away, and I couldn't wait to see what she would put out next in kind of this collection of stories. Myriam Lacroix she's a really interesting kind of soft-spoken writer. So to see her put these stories out that are so kind of ribald and robust is fascinating. I don't think this will be for everyone, but it really was for me. And I totally embraced the whole strangeness of it. Okay, there you go. Last two. All right. The Emperor and the Emperor's Endless Palace by Justinian Huang. This is, it was classified originally as almost like a para, what do they call them? Para romance kind of book. And I guess it's a little bit undefinable to me in that regard. I mean, it is about these two spirits who are destined to meet generation or, in lifetimes after lifetimes after lifetimes. So it's these three different stories that keep running parallel. However, the protagonists in each story are the same people, but effectively reincarnated. And there's lots of sexy time in here. It's a really fun read. I think that it had a little bit of a lull for me in the center, but it really accelerated in the end, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. Again, listen to this on audio, which was great. It was a great set of narrators reading it. But I also, again, think this is it's a stunning cover. But I can't wait to see what Justinian comes up with next in terms of writing and what he decides to do. So, and last, we were The Universe by Kimberly Kim Parsons, and thank you to Knopf for this book. This was such an interesting book to me because it started off as this really hilarious kind of examination of being a parent, the parent who has to be at the going to the park every day with the kids and kind of the drollness of that. It's about a woman, she's married, she has a baby, but she's very bisexual. And so she has fantasies about like the woman that's sitting next to her who's kind of cool and mysterious as they're chatting. But the real meat of the story is about she loses her sister, and her learning how to cope with that tremendous loss. And that really becomes like the center of the book. And for me, there was a little bit of a whiplash moment of like, oh my God, this is, she goes on a trip with her, one of her best friends who's gay, and you wonder, okay, how is she keeping it together? And then the book kind of comes back to where it was in the beginning, which was almost Fleabag-esque. And I say that, and that seems to be used so frequently nowadays in reference to both books and other television shows. But it is something about that where it is funny, but it's also, sad, and how we cope and how we keep going on despite the demands that are put on us by family, kids, whatnot, and what it means to keep going. So if you're a fan of like the Fleabag world, this could be totally something for you. So that's it, 17 books. Hopefully there was some stuff that was interesting. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you plan to read any of these. If you have any questions about any of these, please ask me. I'd love to answer them. Next time I see you, I will be back home. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. I am in the desert this weekend in a very empty room, which is probably what also sounds like I'm in an echo chamber. So thank you all for stopping by. I'll see you in a few days with my June hopefuls, which is also Pride Month, so a lot in there. As always, you can also check me out on the Gaze Reading Podcast and over on Instagram as well. So again, thanks, and I'll see you guys soon.